Okay, so what if I told you that back in 1983, the US Army commissioned a report that had nothing to do with weapons or tactics? Instead, it was about how to use physics to alter human consciousness and, well, transcend reality itself. And the craziest part? This isn't science fiction. It's a real, declassified document called the Gateway Process, and it's basically a step-by-step guide to leaving our dimension.
So the guy they put on this was a lieutenant colonel named Wayne McDonnell. His mission was to check out this consciousness-altering technique called the Gateway Experience. The report he wrote, which was declassified decades later, reads less like a military analysis and, honestly, more like a scientific manual for exploring other dimensions.
I mean, just look at this quote from the report's introduction. It sets the stage perfectly. The objective wasn't just, relaxation or simple meditation. The stated goal was to build a scientific framework to explain how our consciousness could literally transcend time and space.
So how do you even begin to analyze something that radical? Well, McDonald started by putting the Gateway Process into context. He compared it to things we're more familiar with, like hypnosis and meditation, just to figure out what made this thing so different. And if you just look at that goal column on this slide, you can see a pretty clear escalation, right? Hypnosis, it's about suggestion. Meditation, that alters your awareness, but it's still inside your brain. But the Gateway Process, man, it has a way more ambitious goal: to use your synchronized brain as a kind of launch pad to move your consciousness outside of your body entirely. Moving your consciousness outside your body? That just sounds impossible. So how on earth did the report claim it could be done? Well, the whole system is built on one core mechanism, a state of mind called hemisync, and it's engineered through sound. Right, so the engine for this whole thing is hemisync. It's a state where your brain's two hemispheres, the left and the right, are working in perfect harmony. Same frequency, same amplitude. Now, this almost never happens on its own, but the report claims it can be engineered and sustained using specially designed audio frequencies. The report uses this really powerful metaphor to explain the difference. Our normal mind, it says, is like a lamp. The energy is scattered, it's diffused, it's all over the place. But a mind in that hemisync state, it becomes like a laser, a coherent, disciplined, and unbelievably focused stream of energy. So how do these tapes actually get you to that laser-like focus? The report breaks it down into a four-step process. First, it taps into something called frequency following. Your brain just naturally wants to mimic sounds it hears. The tapes use this by playing different tones in each ear, which forces your brain to create and lock on to a third beat frequency. This pushes you into this state of deep relaxation, so deep that even your body's own internal noise, what the report calls the bifurcation echo of the heartbeat, just fades away. And the final step, according to this document, is resonance. Your body's own energy field starts to harmonize with the electrostatic field of the Earth itself, which creates this incredibly stable, coherent state. Okay, so once your brain is tuned up like a laser, the report says you need a completely new map of reality to even understand where you're going. And this is where the author dives headfirst into theoretical physics, and things get really, really strange. You see, the report has to tackle this huge, fundamental question. Because if you want to travel outside your physical body, you first need a map of where you're going. And to do that, you have to accept a completely different model of the universe itself.
And the report's first, crucial point is a big one. Solid matter doesn't exist. It argues that what we perceive as solid is just an illusion our senses create. In reality, everything, you, me, this planet, all of it, is just an incredibly complex system of oscillating energy fields.
The model the report uses for this energy-based universe is a hologram. We're not talking about the kind you see in movies, but a pattern that's created when energy waves interfere with each other. The document argues that the entire universe is just one gigantic, interconnected hologram. And this right here is the key property of a hologram that the whole theory depends on. The part contains the whole. Think about it. If you shatter a holographic plate, each tiny piece doesn't just show a little fragment of the image. No, each tiny piece shows the entire image, just at a lower resolution. This idea that all the information of the universe is distributed everywhere is absolutely central to the gateway theory. This holographic model leads to maybe the most mind-bending idea in the entire document, captured in this quote from the psychologist Keith Floyd. It may not be the brain that produces consciousness, but consciousness that creates the brain. If the universe is a hologram of information, then maybe consciousness isn't something generated by our brains.
Maybe consciousness is the fundamental field, and our brain is just the receiver that decodes it into our physical reality.
Okay, so let's just follow that logic for a second. If the universe is a hologram, and our consciousness is the receiver, then the report lays out how you can actually tune that receiver to frequencies that are beyond our physical reality.
So the ultimate goal of the gateway process is to take that laser-focused hemisync mind and use it to intentionally tune your own consciousness to a higher and higher frequency. The theory is, if you can vibrate your consciousness fast enough, you can literally phase right out of our physical reality.
The report actually points to this number, Planck's distance, as the boundary of our reality. In physics, this is the smallest possible measurable length. You can kind of think of it as the pixel size of our universe. But the report's theory is that this isn't just a physical limit, it's a dimensional one. And it argues that by manipulating energy at this fundamental level, you're no longer bound by the rules of our time and space.
So how do you cross that boundary? The report calls it clicking out. And the logic goes like this. Every energy wave at the very peak of its vibration has to momentarily stop before it changes direction. The report claims that in that infinitesimal moment, that energy is not in our dimension. So by using hemisync to raise your consciousness to an incredibly high frequency, the goal is to make those little moments outside of time-space longer and longer, until you can actually begin to perceive the reality that exists there. And if you could actually control this process, what would be possible? Well, according to this U.S. Army report, the potential abilities are, well, they're extraordinary. We're talking about accessing past and future events, having controlled out-of-body experiences, perceiving other dimensions, and even interacting with what it calls non-physical forms of consciousness.
So, after this incredibly deep dive into physics and consciousness and holograms, what was the final assessment? Did this U.S. Army officer just dismiss it all as total fantasy?
Not even close. This is the official conclusion from the report. Lieutenant Colonel McDonnell actually found the entire process to be plausible, not as some kind of mystical belief, but as a potential application of the principles of quantum physics. And this wasn't just some thought experiment. The report actually concludes by recommending that the Army begin its own experiments, starting with practical goals like remote viewing, and then moving toward more ambitious targets, like making contact with what it calls non-corporal energy forms.
And this brings us right to the final takeaway. After digging through this incredible declassified document, we're left with the same profound question that it poses. It's a question that challenges the very foundation of our reality. So forget everything else for a second and just think about this. Which is it?